Joining me on the program now, Brendon Malone. Brendon, kia ora, thanks for your time today.
Great to be with you again, Andrew.
It is an unfortunate comparison. One person has lost his job. That's tough. That's showbiz. Another person has lost their life. It seems, disrespectful and a little bit disgraceful to make the comparison.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I found kind of partly laughable and partly frustrating is when I've seen people using that word to describe. Jimmy Kimmel is still not sacked permanently either, by the way, and there are strong indications he's coming back on air, so it was a very, very short period off air. And to suggest that this was a martyrdom, I've got to be honest, it does feel a little bit like that sort of drama queen political hype where, everything goes to the extreme and you just hyperbole comes on strong and sort of facts go out the window.
Yeah, certainly. And late night television, never been strong on facts. To be fair, though, and I think this is one of the important pieces to realise, I know that there are some people very upset about the views and the opinions by a number of late night American TV hosts. But putting in context, these aren't journalists, these aren't documentaries, these are basically stand-up comedy guys riffing off the news or their comedic interpretation of it. We shouldn't be holding stand-up comedians to high standards of journalistic integrity.
No, and I agree with that point. They're not journalists. I think a counterpoint that I think is worth considering is, like, particularly someone like Kimmel, there was an analysis done of the guests and the commentary on a show, and over several years, he's had not a single voice or opinion from the right. It's all been one-way traffic.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people don't realize as well is that on the right of American politics, they don't have late-night shows, but there are some really sardonic and cutting and even at times, I think, unkind commentators on the right who do their own version of that. And I would disagree with any sort of abusive insult, but you see it on both sides. But probably people just don't see it because one's on broadcast TV and the other one is online and predominantly probably catering to a younger audience, so they may not realise both sides are doing it.
And hey, at least for now, more on that in just a moment. Just wanting to, I suppose, look at the undue influence that may have happened here, though. A comment recently from US President Donald Trump that people say mean things about him. People take good news stories and turn them into bad news stories. And 97% was a number that he quoted of the news stories against him in mainstream media are negative against him and the decisions that he makes. He said that he believes that should be illegal. Alarm bells go off when a president says that anybody disagreeing with him should be illegal. Perhaps he didn't mean it that way, but it's not a great look.
No, and I would have to say too, this is the thing, that it's clear that Trump clearly has an ego. Anybody who's been watching him for a while knows that's one of his weaknesses. He likes to be liked. He values loyalty. Basically, all of the people close to him in his biographies indicate that. And that's one of the cardinal sins, it seems, for him. If you're not loyal to him, he'll cut you off.
Yeah.
And so clearly he struggles with these weaknesses. And also, he tends to bloviate with all sorts of crazy hyperbole. He just shoots from the hip and doesn't think.
Yeah.
And so I think you've got to put that into this context as well. Now, the people on the left have gone, look, this is just like the Third Reich. But in actual fact, if you trace his history, like people might remember about 4 or 5 years ago when everyone was saying that he was threatening to shut down the postal service, and that was an authoritarian move. It never happened because Trump often does throw out this hyperbole. But there is a problem, I think, here. From a conservative perspective, leaders should be measured. That's part of virtuous prudence and temperance, being measured in your tone, because as a leader at the highest level of the very most powerful nation in the world, your speech and what you say can actually impact the world in very drastic ways. So you do need to be a bit more careful about that.
I think there is also, though, a higher standard of care to Trump giving an opinion. Some would say pontificating, but that may be too close to the truth. But for him to be speculating and a train of thought, that is, I suppose, a different standard than late-night television, where this is scripted, there is an editorial process, people have made a cognitive decision, we are going to say these words. There's been a process in that. Surely there should be a higher standard for that.
Well, I think this is the thing, particularly about Kimmel's comments. Now, I saw someone from The Hollywood Reporter trying to defend his initial comment, and the best defense they could mount is they said, at best, it's ambiguous.
Wow.
But it does clearly seem to indicate that he was pointing to a false claim or making a false claim about the political allegiance of the shooter in the Charlie Kirk case, suggesting he might have been MAGA. Now, the best defense you can make is, well, it's maybe ambiguous. So, yeah, I think when you're a scripted late night show and you have all of those very powerful research tools and researchers at your disposal, I don't think you really have that same excuse. And that's really what we saw here, was he said something very incendiary at a very critical moment in the aftermath of the killing. And then what happened was the affiliates came to Disney and they said, hey, our audience, they're not New York liberals.
Yeah.
They're, we broadcast into the Midwest. They're a bit more balanced. And our advertisers, we're going to lose advertisers over this. This is going to do reputational damage. And they were the ones who put pressure on. But what didn't help was the Trump side of it, the FCC comments when he was asked to weigh in, and that gave the implication that somehow the government might have been the ones doing the censoring, and that is never a healthy thing.
That, again, is a little bit of a bad look. And honestly, if we are holding stand-up comedians to a higher standard of truth than we are our politicians, that, again, is possibly slightly problematic. But just looking at the structure with the FCC, it's as if the Commerce Commission and the Broadcasting Standards Authority were merged. That is essentially what the FCC is. That if you say something inappropriate on radio here, I mean, if you're about to say something inappropriate, Brendon, on this radio show, the Broadcasting Standards Authority can be involved and we can get fined and all of those sorts of things. But if the Broadcasting Standards Authority says, we don't like that guy, we don't want him on air anymore, put pressure on REMA to say, if that guy's ever on your program again, you will lose your license. Or, as was the case here, perhaps we won't approve a merger, which we're looking for, which will be financially lucrative to you. Again, this looks like an imbalance of power, whichever side of the political aisle you're coming from.
Yeah, I agree. And there is still a question mark, though, as to how much of that was true and how much of that was scuttlebutt, because there was a lot of stories flying around about who was to blame.
Yeah.
The Hollywood Reporter lays out the case and makes it very clear that the affiliates were the ones who initiated this, removing him temporarily off air. Disney, in their latest statement yesterday, have said, yes, we chose to take him off because we wanted to sort of de-escalate the incendiary nature of it. When you look at the Hollywood Reporter reporting from late last week, they indicate in their coverage that what happened was that Disney went to Kimmel and Kimmel basically said, no, I'm just going to double down. And that's when they made the decision, we better sort of de-escalate this. But you're right. There is a problem here. The FCC, if it could be shown that what Kimmel said was absolutely, untrue when he accused someone falsely of committing a crime, the FCC actually has a clause about telling lies or promoting falsehood about criminal events. So they could invoke that. But the problem is here, I just think that there was a lack of care and caution from all parties, actually.
Yeah.
People need to, speech is a gift and it's a privilege and it's something we should use from the Christian perspective to actually draw and seek the truth and bring others deeper into the truth. And there was not a lot of care taken here. And I think we all have to think about what the implications of that are.
And again, the different standards of care between truth from politicians and government officials as opposed to late night stand-up comedians, because we all need a jester, don't we? We all need somebody who can offer satire or parody in this space. And, any politician, whichever the side of the political aisle they're on, should be able to take a little bit of challenge here. I think what was very different here is we were talking about a young man who had lost his life tragically. This was all very fresh. And as you say, the advertiser says, this isn't us. We don't want to support, we don't want to advertise on a channel which is making such horrific statements. And at the end of the day, if the TV network can't pay their bills because the advertisers are up in arms, they're going to make a commercial decision, not an editorial one.
Well, that's right. If you bring your company that you work for into disrepute on the company time and on the company dime, then don't be surprised if the company says, hold on, this is an issue. Already, too, late night talk show hosts and their shows, it's a dying medium. The ratings, when you look at the ratings, it's just over the last 10 years, it looks like a ski slope, a steep ski slope downwards. There's no sign of recovery. That's not their fault. It's just the nature of people not tuning in anymore. They're on Netflix and online for other things. And so you've already got a bit of a rating sinkhole. You don't want to create even further financial problems there. And I think I'm really a fan of that, the sentiment that I've heard expressed by people in regards to this, that, as I said, there was the sort of the baseline here probably should have been let's just not say anything. Let's give them a few days, even if you're on the other side of the political aisle,
Yep.
let's give people a few days grace to grieve, and then we'll jump back in with all of the sardonic, humorous attacks and everything else.
And hey, if we have late night talk hosts that think that they can say whatever they like without consequences, that gets a little bit problematic. As you say, it may be the last lap for this particular genre of broadcasting. They don't seem to have the numbers, and certainly if you're paying your late night talk hosts some ridiculous money, then they feel like they can say whatever they want, and that's problematic.
Well, Andrew, I'd say too, like for me, I've described it like this. I think late night talk show as a medium, excuse me, is like the equivalent of the broadcasting equivalent of Weekend at Bernie's. You've got a propped up corpse here that's the people pulling strings, but even when Kimmel does come back on here, which probably will happen, I'd say within 5 years, most of these shows will have a completely different form, probably online.
Yep.
But they won't be late night shows as we've known them.
And perhaps tragically on this one, they still will continue to exist, except they'll be bigger echo chambers than they already are. They will be even more biased and niched, and just having a one particular political or ideological point of view without the balance that perhaps previously we've expected from our mainstream broadcasters but haven't seen it in a while.
That's right. And that's the problem, this algorithm-driven echo chamber. And of course, what that adds to is the more time we spend online in that space, the more likely that is to bleed over into the real-world discourse. And sadly, that is what has been happening.
Hey, appreciate your thoughts, your commentary on this particular issue. Brendon, thank you so much for what you do. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Andrew. Bless you.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Remus studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.